these hidden potentials within our own consciousness and realize who we truly are is what we're about on a Sunday morning here. You know, as you more than likely know, we span the gamut of different faith traditions in unpacking this deeper truth. If we can actually lower the music, that'd be great. Thank you. And so when we look at these different faith traditions, what we find is a song. Truly. One that comes to mind is the Gita, which means song in Sanskrit, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the song of the Lord or the song of God. And when we look at the Gita, we have a teaching of yoga, right? Yoga means union, right? And the yogas that we get in the Gita are three. There's the yoga of works, or karma yoga. There's the yoga of knowledge, or jnana yoga. And then there's the yoga of love, or devotion, or bhakti yoga. And Krishna, who is the incarnation or avatar of God, the Supreme Being, is teaching his disciple Arjuna on the battlefield. That's where the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita takes place, between two armies, as you may know. And on one side, you have the army of the Kauravas, and on the other side, you have the army of the Pandavas, and they're related. They're actually cousins. The Kauravas represent the forces of ignorance, and the Pandavas represent the forces of knowledge. And so Krishna is driving the chariot of Arjuna, who is his disciple and a phenomenal warrior. I think I just lost my audio. No? And so Krishna is instructing Arjuna, who's having a really hard time on the battlefield, because he sees the other side as family. And yet, if you know the story of the Mahabharata, which the Bhagavad Gita, or the Song of God, is just one chapter within the larger epic of the Mahabharata. You can still hear me okay? I feel like my voice went dull or dead. Okay. And so Arjuna is seeing the fact that this side of his family, all they've ever wanted was war and conflict. The army of the Kauravas are headed by this one particular individual. Here comes trouble. So my mic is blipping out.
Yeah, it's very staticky. That's not on.
Test.
Take that off.
Test. No, it's not on.
All right, keep speaking in the one that's fuzzy.
Krishna did not have this trouble on the battlefield. Test. We apologize for the audio issue. I mean, you can hear me now like this, right? This is fine? It's crackling. All right, the handheld is still off. Maybe a little louder. There we go. All right, feel like Tom Jones now. Just don't throw any apparel up here, please. How's everybody doing? I feel like a totally different personality now. All right. So where were we? On the battlefield. Bhagavad Gita, yeah. So Krishna is instructing Arjuna not to be so despondent that he's got to go to battle with this part of his family, because this part of his family has only wanted war and conflict. It's really a larger metaphor of what's happening both on an individual level and on a collective level, say the sages that talk about this epic, the Mahabharata, that it is the human condition. And the human condition is we have two different forces or powers at play within our psyche and, as a result, within our world. And one side of the family is completely psychotic, and the other side of the family wants peace. And so Arjuna, even though he wants peace, doesn't want peace at the cost of having to kill his family. And so this is what the Song of God is basically dealing with. It is giving us a way of looking at the human condition from a completely different vantage point, hence back to the ideas of the three yogas. When Krishna begins the song, it starts in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna at that point has been completely broken. He doesn't know what to do. He's facing a crisis that he knows he doesn't have the power to overcome. So it says in the Bhagavad Gita that he slumps down in his chariot, his hand loosens from holding his bow, and he's completely distraught. And then Krishna, at the beginning of chapter 2, smiles, it says, at seeing Arjuna in such a state. Why would he smile? Why? Because remember, the Gita is very subtle. It picks up on this deeper psychological issue that we have as human beings, that God smiles when we're broken. And God is pleased when we give up trying to do it on our own. So then it says, Krishna smiles at Arjuna and says to him, "You grieve for what shouldn't be grieved over. Know that everyone on this battlefield is an immortal being. There's never been a day that they've ceased to live. There's never been some time in the past that they weren't alive, and there'll never be a time in the future that they won't exist. Everyone here is immortal because everyone here is the soul, the Atman." So it is then that Arjuna gives his surrender to Krishna, and the song of the Gita begins. And so all of this to say is that what the song is basically getting at is how we become, from this place of despondency, enlightened. And the enlightenment comes through yoga, right? Now, the word yoga doesn't mean getting on a mat and wearing a really fancy outfit and, listening to cool music and doing your class. That's really just the outward form of one branch of yoga. The yoga in the Gita is, like I had said, the yoga of works, the yoga of knowledge, and the yoga of devotion. And all of that implies relationship. Yoga is relationship. Yoga is union between the individual self and the divine self. And so Krishna, remember, is the stand-in or the symbol of the Supreme Being. And so when Krishna gives Arjuna these teachings on yoga, he's basically saying, everything you do, do for me. Everything that you want, give it to me first, and then I will direct your path. Surrender to me, and then everything will be made clear and plain to you. So this yoga increases as the Gita goes along. It increases in intimacy. It goes from works, right, doing good things in the world for the sake of God, for the sake of the true, the good, and the beautiful. A lot of us are inspired to find our relationship with God through good works, through outward expression. We have a propensity to act in the world. Others have more of a philosophical bent, and they like to contemplate and deeply meditate and consider the absolute truth and really go deeply within themselves to discover that essence of real knowledge, real union with God through knowledge. And then others are very much heart-centered, feeling-oriented, and they want to open themselves to this direct, immediate relationship with the personal God, right, the Supreme Person, the Bhagavan. And so as the yogas of the Gita are laid out, they increase in intimacy. They start at the level of works. They go to the level of knowledge, and then they finally come to the level of bhakti. And in the Gita's teaching, bhakti is the supreme yoga, intimate relationship with God to the point where there is no separation between the soul and God, is the end game of the song of God. In other words, the song of God has us experience ourselves as a note within the song, that we are being breathed by God. We are being sung by God. We are God's energy. We are God's breath. We are God's power. We are God's love. There's no separation. There's no two-ness. I am the song. I am in union with my beloved. And so this is the game and the goal of this higher yoga. And the reason why I bring all of this up today is because we're going to be looking more directly into how we are unconsciously tuning out the song. One of the ways that it will be expressed is through the myth of Narcissus. Are you familiar with Narcissus from the Greek tradition? If you know of Narcissus, he was a demigod, and he was the most beautiful, handsome individual ever created. And Narcissus caught his reflection in a still pond one day and became so enamored with what he saw that he couldn't take his eyes off of his own reflection. And there he stood until he died. He kept gazing at his self-image, so devoted, so in love, that there was nothing else that existed but his own face. And he withered and died. In fact, one of the nymphs who was in love with Narcissus wanted to be his beloved, but he couldn't hear her. And one of the goddesses, I think it was Hera, was so jealous of this nymph because of her beauty that she cursed her so that she could only repeat words that were spoken. She can never speak from her own agency. She didn't have her own power. And so her name was Echo. So the myth of Echo and Narcissus. And so what we have here then is Echo unable to reach Narcissus because she can't say anything to him. And Narcissus is too preoccupied with his image. And this is what interrupts the song. This is how we tune out this song of God. In fact, there's a whole section within A Course in Miracles that is entitled The Forgotten Song. We forgot the song. And the way that we forgot the song is we fell in love with our own image. And the image that we're in love with right now we call me. And it's this narcissistic personality disorder that is at the heart of human suffering. We are trying to find our love. We are trying to find our completion, but we can't take our eyes off of ourselves. And so we're never really in relationship with anyone except Narcissus. It's a very lonely road. And the only ones that reach us are the ones that seem to be reflecting or echoing back to us our agenda. We want what we want because we think we're number one. And therefore, everyone else should go along with that. And so in Western psychology, this is where it gets really interesting. If you've ever taken a course on abnormal psychology, you'll know this. There is such a thing as NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. And the way that they describe this generally is there was something that went awry during the early stages of development. Males are usually predominantly narcissistic, suffering from NPD, but women, of course, can as well. But what they say happens is, at a very critical stage of infant development, the mother is supposed to be mirroring back to the infant grandiosity. Oh, how wonderful you are. Look at you. You're the best thing in the world. Like, in other words, indulging this over-the-top, exuberant love into the infant so that the infant just feels flooded with so much love. And the mother is just, a source of nonstop affection, admiration, and love. And the infant feels full of love coming in from the primary relationship, which is the mother. Now, what they say goes wrong at this critical stage is if the mother is disconnected from herself, dealing with her own maladies, mental health issues, suffering some kind of a disruption within her own self-worth, stressed, what have you, and she's not exuberantly loving to the infant doesn't know this, right? This is all pre-verbal, and language hasn't developed within the brain yet, but the infant feels the lack. And now the infant has to come out of itself to try to get the mother's love. Here I am, let me do something to make you love me. This is all instinctual at this point, but it will increasingly grow. So what they say happens in the disorder is that imprinting at that early age makes the infant feel like they are not lovable. There's something wrong with me. Why doesn't mommy love me? Right? This is the primary relationship. I didn't get my primary needs met. Something is inherently lacking in me. And so instead of having self-love and a sense of self-worth, there's self-hate. Again, mostly, if not entirely, unconscious. Now, at the core of the identity, then, for the narcissist, self-hate is this feeling of gnawing emptiness and gnawing need, a need to feel complete. And so the narcissist has to then control the objects in his world, or her world, in order for this need to be met. So as they describe this disorder, the psychologists, they say that it's like the narcissist is writing the movie and directing it, and then casting the roles of the different actors to play, let's say, the love interest. And what the narcissist is looking for is echo. Because echo doesn't have a mind of her own or a mind of his own. Echo just does what the narcissist wants to do. And so echoes back to the narcissist the information, the script that he or she is feeding Echo. And that's a match made in heaven for the narcissist, just going along with the movie. But mind you, there's no real relationship here. The song is forgotten. There's no real love, no yoga, no union. There is a gnawing, aching need generated from the sense of disconnect or separation at the core of the identity. And as a result, an attempt to go out there and find someone who will fulfill the needs that I think I have, as long as they hold to the script that I've assigned to them. As soon as that script isn't followed, the narcissist will then turn from love to hate. That woman or man that is now not fulfilling the Echo role is now the enemy, and either needs to be scared into submission or cut loose, and a new Echo needs to come in to satisfy the gnawing, aching need of the narcissist. And so what we're looking at then is a spiritual malady, and this is where we're going now. Don't think you're exempt. You always get good news on a Sunday morning from me, don't you? Even when I'm Tom Jones. It's always fun to realize this. Because what we're finding then is that there is a malady that we are all suffering because we've tuned out the song of God. And we are devoted to the me. We are gazing like Narcissus into our own heart, and all we keep seeing at the center of our life is our own self-image. Me. I'm first. I'm the center. I'm the one who exists first as the subject. Everyone else is an extra in my movie. You're in John's movie. John's going to assign roles. John's going to make what he thinks you are. John is going to give you everything that John thinks based on what John believes. It's John that is God. And you're doing it from your side. Hence, no real relationships can take place while we are in love with our own self-image. We think we're in relationship, but we're really not. We are, in a way, in relationship with our own projections of what we think other people are. This can be a little scary or unnerving. But when you start to recognize it, you begin to say, oh, so this is why I feel so crappy sometimes, or this is why things aren't working out with my partner, or this is why I've never really felt safe or settled within my relationships. So this is really the crux of it. It's to look at it so that we can heal it. And so at every moment, what we're going to see if we're identified as the me, every moment we are avoiding relationship, avoiding yoga, avoiding the song. And so that is startling. And that also explains a lot. It explains why the world looks the way it does. So on that note, I brought along a book that I've had for a long, long time. And I don't advocate the author of the book as a spiritual teacher to follow. He's riddled with issues and problems. He's passed on since 2008. But some of his work is just pristine. Adidas Samraj, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but controversial to say the least. But at the same time, some beautiful music came through despite the instrument. And so I do want to just talk about his, in his book, The Knee of Listening, what he says about this Narcissus. He writes, eventually I began to recognize a structure in consciousness. It became more and more apparent, and its nature and effects revealed themselves as fundamental and inclusive of all the states and contents in life and mind. My own myth, the control of all patterns, the source of identity and all seeking, began to stand out in the mind as a living being. This myth, this controlling logic or force that formed my very consciousness, revealed itself as the concept and the actual life of Narcissus. I saw that my entire adventure, the whole desperate cycle of awareness and its decrease, of truly conscious being and its gradual covering in the whole mechanics of living, seeking, dying, and suffering, was produced out of the image or mentality that appears hidden in the ancient myth of Narcissus. The more I contemplated him, the more profoundly I understood him. I witnessed in awe the primitive control that this self-concept and logic performed in all of my behavior and experience. I began to see that same logic operative in all other human beings and in every living thing. Like when we go to the park, Lisa and I, and we're feeding the ducks and the gallinols and, you know, the ibis and everybody else. There's always a pecking order. There's always a me first, right? This is what he's saying. Every living being is under the spell of the cosmic Narcissus, right? When you begin to look at yourself, you begin to see this everywhere. Right? These ego dynamics, or the dynamics of Narcissus. I began to see that same logic operative in all other human beings and in every living thing, even in the very life of the cells and in the energies that surround every living entity or process. It was a logic or process of separation itself, of enclosure and immunity, right? Closing yourself off, becoming immune to reality. Memory, it manifested as fear and identity, memory and experience. It formed every function of being, every event. It created every mystery. It was the structure of every imbecile link in the history of our suffering. So looking back at our torrid past and our, bloody history and all of the chaos and confusion, Narcissus all. Speaking of Narcissus, he is the ancient one, visible in the Greek myth, who was the universally adored child of the gods, who rejected, listen to this now, he was adored, but who rejected the loved one, right? Separated from the loved one, the song. And every form of love and relationship rejected, who was finally condemned to the contemplation of his own image until he suffered the fact of eternal separation and died in infinite solitude. As I became more and more conscious of this guiding myth or logic in the very roots of my being, my writing began to take on an apparently intentional form. Okay? Just one more little section here. The quality of the entire unfolding has the touch of madness in it, but we are mad. Right? Remember the song we sing on Mondays? It's kind of reminiscent of Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. Well, in A Course in Miracles, it's Jesus says I'm crazy, this I know, for the Course tells me so. Don't be upset. Crazy has a cure. There's a cure to crazy. But you have to diagnose the problem first, right? Like Buddha said, life is dukkha. Life is dissatisfying because we're crazy. We keep taking ourselves out of reality, and we're suffering because of it. We're craving to fulfill the me that doesn't really exist. But we're so devoted to the me that we live entirely for the Narcissus. That's why we're crazy. Easily cured, because Narcissus doesn't really exist. It's just an image in our mind. But we have to see it clearly first before we can actually be free of it. We can't make the world better and remain the narcissist. It just won't work. It might look like it works for a little while, but eventually we'll see we are mad. The ordinary state of our existence, although it is usually kept intact and relatively calmed by the politics of human society, is founded in the madness of a prior logic, a schism in reality that promotes the whole suffering adventure of our lives in endless and cosmic obstacles. I have known since I was a boy that this round of conflict, of contradiction, and unconsciousness was not natural or real. And the whole purpose of my life has been to realize that natural reality, that given form, the bright of consciousness, that is not properly the elusive goal of our lives, but its very conscious foundation. Okay? So this gets back to the yoga of love, this union with God that we can learn to no longer tune out, but tune in. So just take a moment and recognize that wherever you're placing your attention is where you are tuning your consciousness radio. Your attention gives you the channel that is transmitting what you've tuned into. What are you paying attention to? Your attention is the information you'll receive. So I would invite all of us now to simply begin to pay attention to, even if it's just conceptually, this light deep within the core of your heart. You may feel as if there's a lot of cloud cover or density or obstacles in the way, feelings, memories, images, whatever. But underneath all of that obscurity, beyond the darkness, there is this song, this light, this being. And it's here, it's like the field that Rumi speaks about, beyond good and evil. I will meet you there. So John's going to say bye-bye to your ego that he's been making for himself. And he's going to go into that field now and meet you there. Will you join me? And here Rumi comes in the poem You and I. A moment of happiness. You and I, sitting on the veranda, apparently two, but one in soul, you and I. We feel the flowing water of life here, you and I, with the garden's beauty, the birds singing. The stars will be watching us, and we will show them how it is to be the thinnest crescent moon. You and I, unselfed, will be together, indifferent to idle speculation, you and I. The parrots of heaven will be cracking sugar as we laugh together, you and I. And what is even more amazing is that while here together, you and I are at this very moment in Iraq and Khorasan, in one form upon this earth, and in another form in a timeless, sweet land, the field beyond good and evil. And what we were saying just a moment ago, the idea of coming to the root of Narcissus also allows us to go through the door back into the ground of our own being that was being blocked because of our adoration and devotion to our own self-image, that we can go through that door, or as they say in Zen, the gateless gate, the gateless barrier, and come to the luminous ground of our own consciousness. And Rumi has something he'd like to say to that in his poem, The Root of Yourself. Don't go away. Come near. Don't be faithless. Be faithful. Find the antidote in the venom. Come to the root of yourself. Molded of clay, yet need it from the substance of certainty. You are a guard at the treasury of holy light. Come, return to the root of yourself. Once you get hold of selflessness, you'll be dragged from your ego and freed from many traps. Come, return to the root of yourself. You are born from the children of God's creation, but you have fixed your sight too low. How can you be happy? Come, return to the root of yourself. Although you are a talisman protecting a treasure, you are also the mine. Open your hidden eyes and come to the root of yourself. You were born from a ray of God's majesty and have the blessings of a good star. Why suffer at the hands of things that don't exist? Come, return to the root of yourself. You are a ruby embedded in granite. How long will you pretend it isn't true? We can see it in your eyes. Come to the root of yourself. You came here from the presence of that fine friend, a little drunk, but gentle, stealing our hearts with that look so full of fire. So come, return to the root of yourself. And if you recall, he begins that poem by asking us not to run away. Don't, in this moment, avoid the relationship to the root of yourself. Come home to yourself. Below the self-image, deeper than who you thought yourself to be. All of that is the unreal blocking you from the real, the unloving and unlovable blocking you from the genuine love. You cannot find this genuine love outside of yourself because the seeker is Narcissus. The seeker is Narcissus. And that seeking is propelled by lack and self-hate. The seeking only reinforces the separation. You're separate. Now you must go seek. That is avoiding relationship, but not telling yourself that that is what you're doing. You think you're trying to find a relationship. But what you're really doing is you're disguising it so that Narcissus gets to remain the object of your devotion. And now you think you can have the best of both worlds, real relationship and the image that you've made of yourself. That's why he says in A Course in Miracles so beautifully, egocentricity and communion cannot coexist. A little bit from Hafez. Why not be polite? Everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him? So one of the things that we're going to see as we begin to become devoted to remembering the song that we forgot is that everyone is a note in this song. And the song can only be remembered when we begin to recognize the wholeness of reality. No note is left out of the song. Even if the mind is so bent on separating itself from the reality in the moment, in order for us to be at peace, in order for us to remember, we have to integrate and include everyone, even if they seem to be wanting to separate. And so everyone is God speaking if we're listening for that. Right? So this is really at the heart of how we heal this avoidance of relationship. Right? Think about how we hide behind some of these prepackaged responses and habits. In the Masnawi, Rumi actually tells this story of a deaf man who has a dying friend. And the deaf man knows that he can't really hear anything that the dying man is saying. So he's going to run this script in his mind of what he thinks is more than likely going to be the responses to his questions that the dying man's going to say. So when he gets there, he says, so he thinks the dying man is going to, say that he's getting better. So the deaf man's going to say, praise God. And so when he asks the deaf man, how are you doing? He thinks the dying man's going to say, I'm getting better. The dying man actually says, I feel like I'm near death's door. And so the deaf man says, praise God. And then he asks, what is it that happened to you? And the dying man is saying something to the effect of, I took poison, but I'm feeling better. And so he's saying basically, oh, how fortunate for you. And the dying man, as you can probably imagine, is saying, no, I'm actually I've taken poison and it's taken its course and I'm actually, not going to make it. And so the response again is so inappropriate to the actual situation. So what Rumi is basically getting at is instead of coming as a friend for the dying man, the deaf man now appears as an enemy because of his pre-programmed way of thinking. He can't be in relationship with the actual situation and the person. He's in relationship with his own script, completely cut off from what's really going on with that person. And so a lot of the times, if you've noticed yourself, you're not really listening to somebody. You're waiting to say something, maybe. You're not really there for the person. You're seeing them as, again, an extra in your movie, not as God himself, but as this little ego that you think you know. And so we are cut off. We are actually in this habitual pattern of avoiding relationship. And until we recognize that by opening ourselves up and becoming transparent to one another, we're never really going to find the hidden jewel that we really miss and need. And so Hafiz has this story, and we'll see how we do with it. It says, lousy at math. This is the name of the little prose here. Once a group of thieves stole a rare diamond larger than a goose egg. Its value could have easily bought 1,000 horses and 2,000 acres of the most fertile land in Shiraz. The thieves got drunk that night to celebrate their great haul. But during the course of the evening, the effects of the liquor and their mistrust of each other grew to such an extent they decided to divide the stone into pieces. Of course, then, the priceless became lost. Most everyone is lousy at math and does that to God. Dissects the indivisible one by thinking, saying, "This is my beloved. He looks like this and acts like that. How could that moron over there really be God?" Right? So this is all back to avoiding relationship, listening to the voice of Narcissus, and breaking up or fragmenting the priceless jewel that is within the heart of all beings. And when our spiritual eyes open, we realize is whole, the one self, unbreakable, indestructible. But as long as we tune out the song, we can't hear or see it. All right? But I see you. I do feel like a lounge singer right now. I do. This is so cumbersome. I really would like one of those long, skinny ones from, Match Game PM? Remember that one? All right, so bringing it home. So Jesus is talking about guilt and real relationships. When we have guilt, we are lost in the dream of Narcissus. We are separating from one another, and we are avoiding relationship. That is literally the effects of guilt within our mind. We have cut ourselves off from the beloved, and we feel guilty for that, but we've also been seduced into loving our self-image. So it's like a tug of war inside. We are cutting ourselves off from love itself, and we're loving our self-image. Okay? So he says, no real relationship can rest on guilt or even hold one spot of it to mar its purity. Listen to this. For all relationships which guilt has touched are used but to avoid the person and the guilt. What does that mean? It means as long as I'm Narcissus in my relationships where it's all about me, I'm using you. I'm using you to get my pleasure, my sense of identity, my sense of security, my sense of belonging needs, my sense of comfort, safety, whatever. You're there for me, right? And not only do I not see you, I just see my needs and how I can extract them from the relationship with you. And this is all unconscious, mind you. But I'm also using you as a way of avoiding the guilt that I feel for cutting myself off from the primary relationship with God. So when you don't give me my needs the way I've dictated them to you, you're wrong. And the guilt's out there. It's not in my mind. I'm not doing this to me. You're doing this to me. How dare you? So that's what he's saying. Avoiding relationship is giving yourself the pass of saying, this is all being done from the outside to me. I'm not in control of it. This is something that other people have done to me. And he says, too, what's really fascinating is we don't even care about the other person that's really there. We're avoiding that. We care about the version of the person that we have believed is that person. So, again, something to brighten your Sunday morning. Why isn't this place more packed? I mean, really? We're selling good news here. So then he says, determine then not to be as you were. Use no relationship to hold you to the past, but with each relationship, each day, be born again. A minute, even less, will be enough to free you from the past and give your mind in peace over to love. When everyone is welcome to you, as you would have yourself be welcome to your Father, you will see no guilt in you. So remember what the thieves were doing was they were arguing with each other and breaking up the jewel. And one way of that showing up is some people are undeserving of your love. You have special love. You have the people in your life that really do seem to be worthy of your love. And you have other people outside like that moron that Hafiz was talking about who don't deserve your love. And he's saying love, like your true self, is whole and indivisible. If you think there are breaks or fragments within this real love, you'll never be able to tune in the song. As long as you're paying attention to who is undeserving of the love, you will show up avoiding relationship. You're using that person to avoid relationship, right? So he says, give no reality to guilt and see no reason for it. Now it is given you to heal and to make what will be now. And then finally here, as long as you believe that guilt is justified in any way, in anyone, whatever he may do, you will not look within, where you would always find God's love. The end of guilt will never come as long as you believe there is a reason for it. For you must learn that guilt is always totally insane and has no reason. Remember, Narcissus is madness. And then here's the end. Release from guilt as you would be released. There is no other way to look within and see the light of love shining as steadily and as surely as God himself has always loved you. There is no fear in love, for love is guiltless. You who have always loved your Father can have no fear for any reason to look within and see your holiness. You cannot be as you believed you were. Your guilt, your unlovableness is without reason, which the Holy Spirit will restore you to. He will remove only the illusions of yourself, and he will have you see yourself in the fullness of God's love. So, to wrap it up, you will never find the love you're looking for in the fragmented relationships that maybe you've been seeking for it. It's not there. The one seeking it doesn't have it and will never find it. You have to go to the root of that self that you think you are. And it's in that deeper place beyond yourself, but still within your own heart, that the primary relationship will be restored. This is the Krishna Bhakti. This is Krishna consciousness. This is Christ consciousness. This is Bhakti Yoga. This is union with God. This is when the song begins again. Drop the mic. Blue bag's going to go around. For those joining us on Facebook and YouTube, you can click the link and donate below. Thank you very much. Strangers in the night. So the sheen did come after all, huh? Okay. We are grateful for the offering. We bless it and charge it to bring true relationship back to the hearts and minds that it touches in whatever form it may be, and so it is. Amen. Any thoughts or comments from you guys? Yeah, it's really the heart of forgiveness that we've been talking about. So when we realize that the love was within the whole time, that's when we come to understand, as he says in the Course, that we've been forgiven, right? It's a way of saying that we found God's love again, that we were avoiding. That forgiveness then comes from us to others, because now we want to unite with the jewels within them, the divine within them. And so we realize that we are the one that was avoiding relationship and separating and running away. Forgiveness just means that I'm not running away from you anymore. I'm going to stand in my truth and extend the love that I have, knowing who you really are. And then you join with me in this holy moment, in this field beyond good and evil, and we remember ourselves together again. Right? Good? All right. I don't know if I want to let this microphone go, huh, Lee? All right, let's seal the deal. Rise, please. I think I found my place. All right, settling within the heart, feeling the joy, the love, the peace that is you, that is us, that comes from the all and everything of God, beyond time, beyond space, and yet immediately right here in its oceanic embrace of all living things, knowing them intimately. And as we rest in this intimacy together as the one self, remembering itself and giving itself to all, and then all back to God, we know that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Course in Miracles tomorrow night, 7:15 in the classroom. Join us.